Monday morning, I posted something on social media, which received a lot of positive response. Just really my feelings after having watched the Super Bowl halftime show with Bad Bunny. His performance was amazing. My Spanish is nowhere near where it should be. So, of course, I didn't understand everything. But I think any decent human being who watched that show walked away with understanding that language doesn't even matter. There are some things that transcend language, and they include, for example, the ability to talk about love and unity and coming together as numerous nationalities and really just trying to represent the best of who we are. But in typical fashion, there's always going to be one or two people who have something negative to say. And quite frankly, I guess at some point I need to just like stop responding to the negativity and probably just block those people because they don't ever make any meaningful contribution to the platform. They don't engage in dialogue in any way. They just look for an opportunity to be able to take a shot or a jab at the platform or myself, which is kind of sad, really, when you think about it, because this platform really does a lot of amazing good on a daily basis. And I don't have to pat myself on the back. I think the vast majority of you appreciate and know that. And you know what we're all about. But for those of you who don't and really want to, get in the comment section to try to get a few likes. And I'm really happy that not very many people even bothered to like these comments because, again, I think it simply proves that the majority of people, they know the deal, right? They've been here watching the platform. You guys tune in every single weekday to the show. You're paying attention to our posts on a consistent basis. And so this kind of like race baiting and nationality baiting just isn't working anymore. So here's two examples of just how people just have really nothing better to do with their time and want to try to sow divide. And so I want to address these, right? So first of all, clarity is required when reading a post, and it really helps to understand, to seek understanding before reacting. At no point have I ever argued for a world without borders or even suggested that countries don't have the right to their own immigration laws, enforcement, and control. I completely support immigration policies that are balanced, sensible, and fair. I do not believe any foreign national should be able to come and enter a country and take advantage of the system, displace the citizens. Laws exist for a reason, and they must be enforced. So I want to make it clear that's not what this post is about. And what you're referencing isn't about that either. Okay. I speak from lived experience, not theory. I actually lived abroad, unlike most of you, for 15 years in another man's country as a child, and I grew up a large part of my formative years in that country. So I have the unique position of having been on both sides of this coin. Okay. I went to school abroad. I worked abroad. I paid taxes. I built a life abroad. I got married abroad. I lived as an immigrant in another man's country. And I fully understood that I was a guest who had to respect the laws, the systems, and the boundaries of that country. I opted to voluntarily give up my residency in that country. And I wanted to come back and fully immerse myself and move back to my country, the Cayman Islands. And it takes nothing away from the amazing experience I had living in someone else's country, which allows me, once again, to understand the dynamics of even what's happening right now in the US from that specific angle, not just from a Caymanian sitting here trying to, espouse my position or my opinion on something that I have no clue about. Because of that, and this unique understanding of both sides of the conversation, I would challenge someone who's never lived outside of their own borders to do so. I think it's a wonderful experience. And if you can, you should. Everybody should be an immigrant in somebody else's country. But of course, lawful immigrant. I'm not telling you to go and break the laws and illegally enter someone's country, right? Our economy, like most economies around the world, does not function without immigrants. That's the honest truth. Cayman does not function without immigrants. This is simply a fact. At the same time, no country can function without rules, enforcement, and balance. And these truths coexist together. What I consistently push back against is the habit of collapsing complex situations into broad, sweeping statements that paint entire nationalities or communities as criminals or burdens. That framing is inaccurate and unhelpful. I have spoken publicly in favor of humane treatment for Cuban migrants, for example, in this country, including exposing the very poor conditions that they were held in at the Town Civic Center. Nobody else did that. I support humane treatment, and that does not mean that it is supporting open borders. They're two very, very different things. It means that, we're recognizing that even when laws are enforced, people should still be treated with dignity. And I stand by that position. The post that you're reacting to spoke to how people are feeling right now about fear, dehumanization, and being reduced to stereotypes. It's not a commentary on welfare systems, border collapse, or abandoning immigration controls. The crazy thing about it is right now in the United States of America, Americans are being dragged out of their vehicles, thrown on the ground, handcuffed, and taken into custody simply because they have an accent. And they are born Americans with every right by law, by the Constitution, to be able to, work in their own country and live peacefully in their own country. And their constitutional rights are being basically thrown out the window, and it's complete chaos. Nuance matters. Context matters. We can enforce laws, protect citizens, acknowledge the economic role that immigrants play, and still reject narratives that dehumanize entire groups of people. Those positions are not contradictory unless we choose to misunderstand them. So on the boat, I want you to come with me now and have a little bit more understanding on this point, right? You're choosing to misunderstand my position here and around immigrants and welfare, especially in the United States of America. So let's deal with that bit of information that's contained in this post. First of all, undocumented immigrants are largely barred by law from accessing, most federal welfare programs in the United States. So this statement here about them, putting their kids in school, illegals put their kids in school, paid through taxes, and most illegals don't pay taxes, is completely false, right? They don't benefit from these programs. They don't have access to those programs. That includes, but it's certainly not limited to programs such as Social Security, Medicare, supplemental security income, and most forms of federal cash assistance. So let that sink in based on what this person is trying to assert. All right. It just doesn't make any sense. It's not factually correct at all. Even, my apologies, even many legal immigrants are subject to long waiting periods before they can access certain benefits. Despite that, immigrants pay into the system at very high levels. That is also a fact. Undocumented immigrants alone contribute tens of billions of dollars every year in taxes. They pay sales taxes, they pay property tax through rent, they pay fuel taxes, payroll taxes, and billions into the Social Security system using ITIN numbers or mismatched Social Security numbers. Money they will never be able to claim back. Estimates consistently show that undocumented workers in the United States of America contribute more to Social Security than they receive, helping to actually keep the system solvent. Let that sink in for a second. Legal immigrants also have higher labor force participation rates than the native-born Americans. Let me just repeat that again so that really sinks in, okay? Legal immigrants also have higher labor force participation rates than native-born Americans and are overrepresented in essential sectors like construction, agriculture, healthcare, hospitality, food production, elder care, and domestic services. These are industries that would struggle or collapse without immigrant labor. When economists talk about burden, the picture is very, very different from the popular talking points. Immigrants as a whole contribute more in taxes over time than they consume in benefits. Another fact, okay? They expand the workforce by increasing productivity and help to grow the GDP of the country, of America, by the way. They help offset aging populations and labor shortages. So again, when we are discussing the facts here, I think that, this information really has to come from a place of things that you can verify, okay? These are factual things. Their children, for example, who are citizens, are more likely to actually be. So there's quite a bit here that we really need to look at. For example, their children who are citizens are among the strongest contributors to future tax bases. Most credible studies show that the net fiscal impact of immigrants is neutral to positive, especially at the federal level. And any short-term local costs are usually tied to underfunded state systems, not immigrant behavior. The real strain in the US is not immigrants living on welfare, as this post says. The real drivers of fiscal pressure are healthcare costs, an aging population, tax structures that favor wealth over labor, and corporate subsidies and tax avoidance. So chronic underinvestment in infrastructure and social services, reducing complex economic issues to immigrants are a burden is not supported by the data. It's a narrative that persists because it's simple, right? It sounds simple. People think, therefore, it must be real, but it's actually not accurate. You can support strong borders, sensible immigration controls, and law enforcement and still acknowledge the reality that immigrants are not draining the system. In many cases, they're helping hold it together. That distinction actually matters as well. Now, the other thing I want to address here in this, comment is the fact that, this is hypocrisy. Sandy, please spell it correctly. It's a Y, not an I. Saying that she just posted about 2 Cubans that escaped custody and police in a manhunt. Okay, let's actually look at what was said, right? What was said is that residents in the vicinity are being told, I didn't say it. I said residents in the vicinity are being told that 2 Cuban migrants are reportedly on the loose and they should remain inside as a precaution. Nowhere in that does it say anything about assuming that all Cubans are violent criminals. How do you jump from, it's like if you can't factually keep it together, right? When everybody can go back and see that this is what was said. How do you jump from that, talking about 2 Cuban migrants who got away, to all Cuban migrants are violent criminals? Who said that? Who said anything about violent criminals? Nobody. The post simply mentions that residents in the vicinity are being told, right? The 2 Cuban migrants are reportedly on the loose. Okay, and that they should remain inside as a precaution to let the authorities search for these 2 individuals and to help, hopefully, locate them. We don't know who they are. I'm sure they've not even been properly vetted because, as we well know, a lot of Cubans who do come here come with absolutely no paperwork at all. So we would have no knowledge about who they are, what background they come with, whether they're violent or nonviolent. We would not know. What we do know is they're supposed to stay where they are at the detention center, and they decided not to stay. So yeah, that's a problem that you enter a country, without any legal paperwork or any legal means. Then there's a particular process that you have to go through in order to actually be properly assessed and vetted, et cetera. And then you ignore that process and you leave the facility, the detention facility where you're supposed to stay. I don't condone that, right? Does it mean that these two are murderers, child molesters? I have no clue who they are. None of us know who they are, right? Because the authorities, no doubt, are still in the process of trying to identify them and be in contact with the Cuban authorities to figure out, can we get documentation of these individuals and who they are? So we don't know that. So once again, trying to put words in my mouth that were absolutely never said is deplorable. All right, there's one more on the Facebook post. So that one was Instagram. This one is Facebook. And again, this one, Miss Dorothy Chambers, has a lot to say. Happy to see this media house which endorses injustice, segregation, and disrespect of others based on their culture and nationality all actually get it right this time. Huh? Miss Dorothy Chambers, do you actually listen to CMR? Are you a person who has ever paid even a little bit of attention to what it is that we do here? Because if you did, there's no way that you could be making this comment. We endorse injustice, segregation, and disrespect of others based on their culture and nationality. Really? Right. As Jamaicans would say, woman, take away yourself. Take away yourself with this nonsense. This is ridiculous. Come on now. Our biggest fans on this platform are foreign nationals, Filipinos, Jamaicans, Indians, Nepalese, people from all Americans, North Americans, people from all over the world, right? We're not disrespecting people based on their culture or nationality. But you see, this is what happens. As a Caymanian, when you say, you know what, we don't want anyone to disrespect us, our culture, and our nationality. Oh, all of a sudden, to a small handful people like Dorothy Chambers here, oh, you're a bad person and you must hate everybody because, because you tell people to respect our culture and not go around saying things about us that is disrespectful and untrue. Like the Jamaican guy who was telling, our government to go suck your mother and all kind of foolishness. Standing up for your own people does not mean that you hate another nationality or that you hate other cultures or that you hate other people. Once again, I'm not saying that, I'm perfect and I don't have feelings about most likely how Caymanians are being treated in this country. But I have a very diverse, because again, my exposure as a young child, having lived in the environment that I lived in, I had very, very diverse friends. In university, I was a resident assistant on the 13th floor, which was the international floor. And I met kids, university students from all over the world, the Caribbean, United Arab Emirates. My neighbor, the guy next door, he was from UE, United Arab Emirates. His father was a minister. I'm sitting here defending Muslims when some of y'all just hate people just because they're Muslims, no other reason than they have a different religion than you. I'm sitting here defending the LGBTQ plus community. I'm sitting here defending, for me, it's about how you act and how you behave, right? That determines who you are. It's not about your nationality. Now, does culture and nationality potentially impact how you behave and who you are? Naturally, yes. Okay. And so sometimes that comes into play when we're talking about people saying, wow, certain people sure know how to cause trouble every single place that they go, right? Those are general statements, but I try to engage with people on an individual level. And I can tell you one thing, I have met people from all over the world that are amazing individuals, right? From every quarter of the world. Some are fantastic, some are not so great. And at the end of the day, I try to judge them based on their individual behavior. not based on any culture or nationality. Okay, so let me make it very, very clear. Now, I don't know what specifically Miss Dorothy is talking about. Segregation. We try to bring people together. That's why the other day when someone was saying how the guy in that video talking about, oh, Cayman is mistreating Jamaicans. I'm like, stop the foolishness. Stop the nonsense. I'm not saying that some don't, but from my own experience, that's a very large percentage. The majority of people mistreating Jamaicans are their own Jamaican people. And I know that. You know how I know that? Because the vast majority of people who reach out to me to get money back for work permits, who've been scammed when purchasing stuff or whatever, are actually Jamaican nationals. And when I say, okay, send me the information, who's the guy, who's the person? In probably 80 to 85% of the cases, it's one of their own. Yeah, we have the Kevin Barneses of the world who's just a no good Caymanian who's scamming everybody he can possibly get. We've got a Judith, or her last name is Douglas, another Caymanian scamming people from all over. And who was it that actually exposed Judith so that the police could arrest her this last go round and try to help all of those people? Unfortunately, they're not going to get their money back because Judith done spend that on gambling a long time. But who was it that went to the police and said, no, you can't do this to these people? A lot of those people were non-Caymanians. In fact, all of them were non-Caymanians, Jamaicans and Filipinos and Indians. They were non-Caymanians who were desperate for, affordable housing that was actually in really good, decent condition. And this woman was taking advantage of them. I stood up for those people. You know why? Because you have to stand for right. And it had nothing to do with nationality. But I know for a fact that none of them were Caymanians. So, Miss Dorothy, take away yourself. Like, seriously. You guys don't have a clue. If you don't like the platform, here's the thing. If you claim that this is a media house who endorses injustice, segregation, and disrespect of others based on culture, nationality, why are you even on our page? I mean, if I legit felt that way about any of these social media pages, why would I be following them? Why am I commenting? Right? Go to another media house where you feel like, oh, they're bringing people together, whoever that is, whoever you think that is. That's your prerogative. You have a choice to choose. Don't feel compelled to come in the comment section and have anything to say. Right now, I just see somebody popping up again, asking for help, sharing their story. Okay, trying to get repayment. This young lady, $15,000 somebody owes her, and guess what? She's not a Caymanian. Do you think that means I'm not going to help her? Absolutely not. I'm going to put every effort into helping her get her 15 grand because listen to me, $15,000 don't come easy for nobody, especially if you're here on a work permit, trying to send money most likely back home to help your family. You see, I get it because I have been in that position. Like I said, I have lived in another man's country and I never wanted anybody to abuse me based on my culture or nationality. Did it happen? Yeah. There were times I was discriminated against in university just because of the color of my skin in the same United States of America. Right? When I first went there as a 9-year-old kid, those other American kids didn't understand my Caymanian, my strong Caymanian accent. And of course they made fun of me. Right? And what was I going to do? So for that reason, for my own lived experiences, I am willing to give people the benefit of the doubt, to hear them out, to hear what they have to say. So Dorothy, please, like I said, I responded, please unfollow and block the CMR pages. You'd be doing yourself a favor. That's what I would suggest if I were you. That's what I would do. And so I'm going to suggest you do that. Anyway, folks, have a good night. We'll see you guys in the morning. Take care.